Hello, Chris. I am here with my feedback on your wonderful story, The Warlock's Bride. I thought that filming a video like this to give you the feedback would definitely help convey my thoughts better than, ironically, than the written word, because sometimes the written word has no tone. And I just think it's more helpful for other writers to hear the person who's giving them feedback speaking it, because yes, the written word has no tone, and I wouldn't want anything that I said to be misconstrued. So that's why I thought that the best way for me to be giving responses to my clients like you would be to film. So, and plus, you're if you watch my vlog, you're used to this talking head. So, without further ado, I really enjoyed reading your story. To me, okay, I don't know if you have read Bram Stoker's Dracula, but I have, and it's one of my favorite books. This almost felt like an homage to that book. If you haven't read it, I suggest you pick it up because it would be eerie. It's pretty eerie if you wrote this without ever having read Dracula or even been exposed to the story of Dracula. What Bram Stoker does in Dracula is he has this really slow build of tension that's excruciating as it builds the suspense, and the whole time you're being filled with this sensation of dread even though you don't know exactly what's going on, and I felt that you captured that really well in your story as well. Even though we're exposed to the Warlock in the backstory and we see what he's capable of, we still don't know why Mila's being wed to him, like what his nefarious purpose is, because it's pretty obvious from the start that it's like he doesn't just want a wife. There's no love involved, there's no romance involved. So that question, having that question in your mind as you're reading, it created tension between me and the page and the pacing of the story, and that was good because it carried me throughout. And of course, we don't find out his nefarious intention until the very end. That said, it also felt a little reminiscent to me of Beauty and the Beast, which I also liked. It's kind of like a dark fairy tale. If you've read Darkling, then you know that that I'm also interested in dark fairy tales. So, and in that way, it was just reminiscent in the sense that it was a young woman sacrificing herself, basically, and going to a beast, for lack of a better term, even though he's very handsome, but he's very beastly, the Warlock. And going into a magical world, a magical kingdom. So that leads me to the next thing I would like to talk about. Your use of magic in this story really impressed me. There were images in here, such as the zombie dragon. I'm always going to remember this story as the zombie dragon story, that I've never been exposed to before. And so you know how I was just saying, it reminds me of Dracula, it reminds me of Beauty and the Beast. It has a freshness that those stories don't have. So I thought that you found a balance between mimicking kind of an older style of storytelling and also keeping it fresh and keeping it new. I thought you struck that balance really well. Because as I was reading, just as I would start to get comfortable and be like, okay, I think I know where the story is going, it would take a twist. And like the type of magic that the Warlock would use, I would not see that coming. And that was very entertaining to me as well. Most of my overarching constructive criticism would be it's too short. So I thought it was great that you started in the middle of the action with Mila being sent to her doom, as it turns out, and then told us the backstory. So the backstory is told to us all in summary, and I didn't have a problem with that because obviously it's backstory, so I'm just learning about where I am and what's going on in this world, and I thought that you set up the world and the history very succinctly. This thing is only 5 pages long, and yet by page 2, I already know all of this history, and I already know so much about what's going on in this world. I would like to know a little bit more about the world. I didn't know if this was our world or if it was a world very similar to ours. I didn't know if this was our world and just like a mythic space where obviously magic exists. So I did have questions about that, but that said, I am a fantasy reader, and so I very quickly just accepted, that there is magic in this reality. And that it was, not in our time period, it was obviously sometime far in the past. So, so that brings me back to what I was saying, which is that it felt a little short, because by the time we get back to the present action, the amount of backstory felt top-heavy, and that's kind of a common, not mistake, but a common pattern that people who are writing short stories fall into, because you're investing so much time and energy in the beginning in setting the scene that once you actually get into the meat of the story, the action, sometimes there isn't as much to balance out the introduction. The way that I would suggest you flesh this out is to show us a lot of the scenes that take place. I've written notes in the sides here asking, like, for specific scenes, being like, can we see this in scene? For example, when she first arrives, and she has, okay, no, it's not till page 4, when she has the discussion with him about the fact when he kind of is like, well, no, we're getting married tomorrow. We're not getting married in a few days. That's a conversation that they're having, but we don't, as the reader, we don't get to read it as a conversation. We read it all in summary. So that kind of goes back to the classic creative writing piece of advice of show, don't tell. That's a good example of what show, don't tell actually means. So what you're doing in those paragraphs is telling us, oh, he said that, and she said that, and he said that, and she said that, but we're not actually getting to be in the scene with them. One of the benefits of being in the scene with them, other than obviously there'd be dialogue tags in the formatting, which is another thing that some of these paragraphs I felt like could have been broken up a little bit when I instinctively kind of felt that I'd encountered a space where the paragraph could be a new paragraph. I did the little paragraph symbol, but so one of the benefits of seeing these events unfold in scene is that will then give you an opportunity to imbue the characters with a bit more life. They are, we don't know much about Mila, and this is always a fine line to walk with short stories, as I'm sure you know. It is short, so we're not going to be with the character for a long time. However, as it is, she's a little bit one-dimensional because we just know that she's scared. And that's kind of all we really know of her the whole time. And same with the Warlock. All we really know about him is that he's very powerful and he's not above using that power for nefarious purposes. And that when he wants what he wants, he's going to find a way to get it. So we know a bit more about him than we know about Mila. But there's a little bit of, not necessarily humanity missing, because I understand he's the villain, we're not supposed to feel compassion for him. But for Mila, our compassion for her is coming from the situation, feeling bad for her, rather than anything intrinsic to her character. So that leads me to the end. The end when she, is in such terrible pain and is going through this horrific transition of having half of her soul sucked away. And then she just gives up. So granted, I don't know that much about her. She doesn't seem to be that big of a fighter. She at least has a little spunk, a little curiosity. She's asking questions. She's challenging. However, as soon as she undergoes that, she's just like, oh, okay, whatever, I give up. And I kind of felt like maybe that was the point. Maybe the point was to leave me unsatisfied. The point was to leave me wanting more. The point was to leave me be like, no, do something, fight back, find a way around this curse, because, or maybe you were going for a more dismal ending. And the dismal ending, the message is that, maybe we can't fight against fate because it's useless. So even if you wanted a more dismal ending, a question I would have for you is, why are we hearing this story about Mila? Why? Why not one of the other wives? Usually the impetus for writing a story would be because there's something different. There's something about this woman or this character that breaks the pattern. That said, I fully understand the Warlock's the main character because we focus the most on him. However, if every single wife goes through the same steps and ends up meeting her untimely death, and maybe eventually there would be one that would challenge him more. So why aren't we hearing that story? Why aren't we hearing the story of the person who breaks the mold, basically, is what I'm saying. So that's why I was expecting Mila to break the mold, because we'd already been told, oh, for 240, I can't remember the exact date, but it was something like over 200 years, this has been happening to these women from this community. So what sets Mila apart? That's my question for you. What sets Mila apart from those other women? And once you have the answer to that, you can go back and add that to her character. And it'll just make her character development and the story a little bit clearer. There was another thing that I noticed, which I do in my own writing, and it's a pet peeve of mine, and that is repeating words in either in the same sentence or in the same two sentences that are back to back. I think that happens because as we're writing, we're like, she looked over there and saw that blade of grass moving, and it looked like it was swaying as if someone had gone by, so looked and looked. I think that happens because as we're writing, our eyes are like, oh, I see the word look, you need something like that, okay, let me just put that out, it's easy. And sometimes when we're writing and the writing comes really easy to us, we're actually kind of like repeating ourselves. So, personally, and again, if you don't agree with this, just don't listen. Personally, I like my writing to feel a bit more fresh than that, and I don't want there to be repeated words. So part of my editing process is then I'd go back and the sentence I just gave you, I would be like, instead of it looked to be moving as if someone went by, I would say, it seemed to be. You know, I would find a similar word to replace it so that I wasn't repeating. So when I did encounter those repeated words in your story, I just kind of underlined them just so that you'd be aware of them. Hopefully you'll be able to read my writing. I realized after I started marking this up, I should have double spaced it before I printed it out so that there'd be more room for me to write notes. But, yeah, let me know if you're not clear on any of them, and I will try my best to decipher what I've written. There were some moments with some really beautiful descriptions, and again, you'll be able to go through and see my notes and find the places where I'm like, oh my gosh, this was lovely. Yeah, so overall, I found this very developed. Like I said, the world building that you put into this and into the characters is really impressive for such a short piece. And the fact that I already knew so many of the mechanisms of the world within the first 2 pages is really impressive as well. So definitely be proud of that. And be proud of this short story. I know you said it took you a long time to write. Who cares? That doesn't matter. What matters is that it was worthwhile and is worthwhile to you, and that I know you also mentioned it helped you through a dark time, and that's a beautiful thing. You know, being able to use our craft, use our art, use our fiction to help us exercise our inner demons, for lack of a better expression. That's a wonderful thing. And it's cheaper than therapy. So, yeah, that's kind of it in summary. I just, overall, I want to see more happening and seen. I want to experience, once we're done with the backstory, I want to experience the castle or the palace, the magical world, the statues moving, the conversations. I want to experience that with Mila. And the best way to do that would be to actually show it to us in scene instead of telling. So, I hope that helps you, and please feel free to ask me any questions. And yes, I'll be sending all of this to you, so you'll have both my notes and this feedback, and of course you have my email. So, yes, I hope this serves you well. And again, you should be very proud of this. I was very impressed. Well done. And also, yes, I've taken into consideration your comment about potentially doing a vlog episode about the craft of short story writing, which I've written a lot of short stories, as you well know, and I haven't thought about the craft of short story writing in a long time, but I appreciate that you're prompting me to do that so that I can film an episode on it. So thank you for that. Okay, I hope that this video finds you well and that you find this helpful, and again, if you have any follow-up questions or anything, feel free to email me. Okay, take care.